He's the most famous author alive. Yet you may not know a single line he's ever written. James Patterson has sold more books than Stephen King, J.K. Rowling, and John Grisham combined. Over 425 million copies worldwide. He holds the record for the most #1 New York Times bestsellers in history. He earns more in a single year than most authors will in a lifetime. But here's the twist. Critics have called him a factory, a brand, even a terrible writer. Stephen King once sneered, "He's not a writer, he's a money machine." Patterson didn't flinch, because while the critics complained, the readers kept buying. He's been praised as a savior of modern reading, especially for kids who hate books, and slammed as the man who cheapened literature with his army of co-authors. He co-wrote novels with presidents and pop stars, from Bill Clinton to Dolly Parton. And in 2026, he's teaming up with YouTube's MrBeast for what's being billed as a billion-dollar thriller. He's won the National Humanities Medal for promoting literacy, but also faced backlash for saying white male writers were victims of racism, a claim he later apologized for. His books have been banned from schools, yet his foundation has poured millions of dollars into libraries, classrooms, and scholarships. How does a working-class kid from Newburgh, New York, once just another advertising executive, become the most unstoppable publishing juggernaut the world has ever seen? This is the story of James Patterson, the adman turned literary empire, the writer who doesn't write, the philanthropist who gives away millions, the bad writer who became the most successful author in history. And whether you think he's a genius, a hack, or something in between, one thing is undeniable. James Patterson rewrote the rules of storytelling, and he's not finished yet. So how did this quiet kid from Newburgh grow into the world's most unstoppable publishing force?
Patterson's had a creative explosion, more like a volcanic eruption.
How many of these are there?
This many.
You're involved in some way in every single one of these?
Not in some way. Yeah, 80% of them I did the outline.
To understand James Patterson's empire, you need to start at the beginning, long before the millions, before the critics, before the empire. Back in a small New York town, with a shy boy who read quietly in the corner, James Brendan Patterson was born on March 22, 1947, in the small Hudson River town of Newburgh, New York. His parents were working-class Irish Americans. His father, Charles, worked as an insurance broker, often struggling to keep steady work. His mother, Isabel, was a school teacher and homemaker who instilled in her children a deep respect for learning, even when the family didn't have much money. Patterson was the oldest child, and though his future fame would rest on words, he wasn't always the most talkative. He was shy, reserved, and happiest when left alone with a book. He's admitted in interviews that as a kid, he was more of a quiet observer than a center of attention type. He wasn't dreaming of becoming an author then. He was just a boy who liked stories. Books became his escape. He read voraciously, everything from thrillers to classics, devouring writers like James Joyce, Ernest Hemingway, and later the crime stories of John D. MacDonald.
I would go into Cambridge 3 times a week or so and just buy all these paperbacks for like a dime and stuff, used paperbacks. And I started reading this stuff and I'm going, oh, I love this stuff. This is really cool. This is, and it wasn't the kind of, commercial stuff that I write now, but it was, it's just more serious stuff, some comedic stuff, Thomas Berger, 100 Years of Solitude, which was still my favorite novel I've ever read. And it just turned me on. And then I started scribbling and I loved it.
Patterson once said, "I didn't love reading at first, but then I started reading stories that caught my attention, and suddenly the lights turned on."
I was a high school valedictorian. I did not like to read.
Yeah.
The books that they gave us all the way through high school, it just nothing turned me on. I then worked my way through college at a mental institution, and if I did night shifts, there wasn't much to do. Mm-hmm. And I started reading my brain. I would go into Cambridge like 3 times a week and just get a stack of books. Mm-hmm. And that's what turned me on.
He attended St. Patrick's Parochial School and later Newburgh Free Academy. but he was hardly the star student type. He has said his teachers saw him as a nice kid, but not special. Still, he loved English classes, and he was curious enough to keep pushing forward. After high school, Patterson enrolled at Manhattan College in the Bronx, where he majored in English and graduated summa cum laude. From there, he went on to Vanderbilt University in Tennessee, where he earned a master's degree in English literature. At Vanderbilt, Patterson steeped himself in great writing, but he still wasn't sure what to do with it. He once joked, "I had a master's in English, which is about as useful as a master's in unemployment." During these years, Patterson worked a series of odd jobs to get by. He worked as an aide in a psychiatric hospital in Massachusetts, where he spent long hours talking with patients. Those conversations left a deep impression on him, and he's often said they gave him an early window into the human psyche, the struggles, fears, and resilience of people, which later fed his thrillers. "I learned how fragile people are," he recalled, "and how strong they can be at the same time." But the biggest pivot of his life came when Patterson stepped out of academia and into advertising. Moving back to New York City, he landed a junior job at the legendary agency J. Walter Thompson. At first, he was just another kid in the copy department, but quickly, he found he had a knack for it. He could boil down an idea into a punchy line, a hook, a message people remembered. Over the years, Patterson rose through the ranks. By the late 1980s, he would eventually become CEO of J. Walter Thompson North America, one of the most powerful jobs in the industry. Along the way, he created some of the era's most memorable campaigns. One of his most famous was Burger King's slogan, "Aren't you hungry?" a line so catchy it helped make fast food feel fun and bold.
Okay, who's hungry out there? Aren't you hungry? Yeah! Aren't you hungry for Burger King now? Aren't you hungry? Aren't you hungry for Burger King now? Aren't you hungry?
He also worked on campaigns for Kodak and Toys R Us, mastering the art of emotional appeal in 30-second spots. Those advertising years shaped him in profound ways. Patterson wasn't just learning how to sell hamburgers or cameras. He was learning how to grab attention fast, how to keep people hooked, and how to deliver a message with clarity and impact. Lessons that would later define his fiction.
Okay, so I just finished this book, The Writer by James Patterson. I'm at the lake right now, and oh my God. I have to say, I haven't had a book where I haven't been able to anticipate the twists in forever. And there was like 3 major twists where I stopped and just went, what the Excuse my French. I couldn't put it down. It's a really fast read. Well done. Chef's kiss.
He's often said, "Advertising taught me to get to the point, to make every word count, to hook the reader in the first sentence." And yet, even as he climbed the corporate ladder, Patterson had another life hidden in the background. He was writing. Nights, early mornings, weekends. Whenever he could squeeze it in, he scribbled stories on yellow legal pads. He wasn't telling anyone at the agency about it. He was still just a young man with a dream, scratching words on paper while the rest of Madison Avenue slept. That dream became his first novel, The Thomas Berryman Number. It was a crime thriller about a Southern assassin. When Patterson finished the manuscript, he sent it out and faced rejection after rejection. 31 publishers turned him down. He was told it wasn't marketable, that it wouldn't sell.
First book was rejected by 31
publishers, yeah.
What was the response you got 2 days after submitting your 32nd?
I picked up the New York Times book review, and there was a story about a young agent. He was aggressive and he wanted to read stuff, blah, 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 blah. So I sent him this packed in a cardboard box manuscript over that I had already tried to sell myself. The next day, I got a call from his office. I go, I can't believe they turned it down this quickly, He said, no. This is Francis Greenberger. Come on over. I'm going to sell this thing.
But Patterson kept at it, and in 1976, The Thomas Berryman Number was finally published by Little, Brown and Company. The book didn't sell well, only about 10,000 copies, and Patterson's advance for it was modest, just a few $1,000s. but it won the Edgar Award for Best First Novel from the Mystery Writers of America, a prestigious honor for a 29-year-old debut author. For a debut author, it was a stunning achievement. Patterson himself later admitted he was shocked to win. It gave him confidence, but not yet a career. At that point, Patterson was still firmly an advertising executive. He had one novel on the shelf, a prestigious award, but nothing close to fame or financial security from writing. If anything, he was living a double life. Adman by day, novelist by night. Through the late 1970s and 1980s, Patterson kept writing. He published a handful of thrillers, Season of the Machete, The Midnight Club, Black Market, but none of them made him a star. He was respected, but not yet a bestseller. And still, he kept at it, refining his style, writing in bursts, cutting his chapters short, keeping the pace brisk. He was experimenting with what would become his signature style.
But plot-wise, the reason why I recommend James Patterson is the chapters are super short. So if you're not a big seasoned reader or you're wanting a fast-paced read, I always gravitate towards James Patterson because I know I can read like 50 chapters in like the entire day when really it might only be like 40 pages. But it actually makes you read even faster once you start being like, oh my God, I read 50 chapters today. That's awesome. So then you keep reading and reading and reading.
Looking back, Patterson has said those years of balancing two worlds, advertising and writing, taught him the discipline he needed. He learned that even after a 12-hour day in the office, he could sit down and crank out pages. Writing wasn't about waiting for inspiration. It was about showing up, day after day.
I don't like banging your head against a wall. I don't like sitting there and complaining about stuff. I'm a pragmatist and I'm a doer. Do it. Go write the books, man. Get them done. Don't complain about it. Get your kid reading. Don't complain about it. Just you get it done. And
I don't believe in the myth of writer's block, he said. If you want to write, you sit down and write. By the late 1980s, Patterson had established himself as a successful executive and a novelist with some promise, but he hadn't yet broken through. That wouldn't come until 1993 when he introduced a detective named Alex Cross to the world. And from that moment on, everything would change.
I just finished Along Came a Spider by James Patterson. What? That was the craziest ride ever. It reminds me of a mix between Silence of the Lambs and Criminal Minds. Overall, I definitely recommend, but yes, this book was amazing. I would definitely recommend looking up any trigger warnings. It is very graphic and heavy to read. I definitely wish the person who recommended me this book.
Real quick review on Along Came a Spider by James Patterson. Weeks ago, I started reading another one of his books and about Alex Cross, which is his character in there. This is the first one. Excellent book and excellent character. Good job, James.
Decades later, in 2009, Patterson would sign one of the richest publishing contracts in history, a $150 million deal with Hachette to deliver 17 books over 3 years, an almost unimaginable leap from the few $1,000 advance he earned for his debut. At 62 years old, Patterson had become the highest-paid author in the world.
The world knows you as probably the most successful living author today. 400 million copies of your book sold.
yeah, too many, way too many. He writes too many books, but whatever.
67 #1 New York Times bestsellers. You've got 13 more books coming out this year alone.
So, what was the moment that turned James Patterson into James Patterson? In 1993, at the age of 46, Patterson finally broke through with Along Came a Spider. The novel introduced Detective Alex Cross, a Washington, D.C. psychologist and investigator who would go on to anchor more than 30 Patterson books. It was his first true bestseller, launching a series that would become one of the most popular in modern thriller history.
What is the best book you've ever read?
Anything by James Patterson, one of my favorite authors. Anything by James Patterson, literally.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Alex Cross series by James Patterson. So far, it's my favorite books of James Patterson is the Alex Cross series. I tried to read the #1 Lawyer, It was good, but I DNF'd it. I know.
Let's see if I can find it.
Along Came a Spider hit the New York Times bestseller list and quickly established Patterson as a rising force. Its success led to follow-ups like Kiss the Girls, 1995, and Jack and Jill, 1996. Hollywood took notice, adapting the first two novels into films starring Morgan Freeman as Alex Cross, bringing Patterson's character to a global audience.
Jesse?
How did you,
Ace is an ace, Jesse. Plus your timing was a little off. I watched the tapes.
This success gave Patterson the confidence to leave advertising in 1996, at age 49, and commit to writing full-time. It was a bold move, walking away from one of the most powerful jobs in Madison Avenue advertising to gamble on himself as a novelist. Patterson doubled down, launching new series beyond Alex Cross. In 2001, he introduced Women's Murder Club with First to Die, which became another bestseller and led to a long-running series. In 2005 came Maximum Ride, a young adult fantasy about genetically altered teenagers, which expanded his reach into teen readers.
If Witch and Wizard was the reason that I started reading again, Maximum Ride was the reason that I continued. It follows a group of kids who essentially have been genetically altered to be part human, part avian. So they all have wings, and they also all have different abilities, which immediately was a yes for me. When I first saw this, I was immediately yes. Absolutely. I'm all into superhero, powers, abilities, all that jam.
I just read Maximum Ride for the very first time at the age of 25, and holy shit, I didn't read these books as a kid, so I was not prepared for how batshit crazy.
So I'm not going to be able to tell you the whole story, but that's why you're able to get them yourself. So if you're able to get it, absolutely give it a try. And this 150% is a big part of the reason that it became the reader.
Soon after came Michael Bennett, private, and even middle grade books like Middle School, The Worst Years of My Life, 2011. By the mid-2000s, Patterson had become a publishing phenomenon. In 2006, he outsold John Grisham, Dan Brown, and Stephen King combined. His books accounted for roughly 1 in every 17 hardcover novels sold in the U.S. He was also the first author to sell more than 1 million ebooks. Central to this rise was Patterson's unconventional system of collaboration. He began working with co-authors, providing them with detailed outlines, sometimes up to 60 pages long, while they drafted full manuscripts under his supervision. Patterson would then revise and shape the final product. This process allowed him to release an astonishing 10 to 15 books per year. Critics called it factory fiction, but Patterson framed it differently. It's not about me writing every word. It's about telling a story people can't put down.
What's the writing process entail for you?
Well, I know what the core is. I know what the core of the story is. I interviewed Michael Connelly. He's a very good mystery writer. And Michael said, I have a hunch about the story. It has the pieces. I know it has the parts. I know it. I'm not sure exactly how it's all going to go, but I know I have it. And the ending could change, but I know what the. I'm doing a book. I think it's this year. The First Nazi, which is a Hitler historical. And it's a really cool thing. It's a story that I'm not going to reveal it here, but it's a story that hasn't been told about Hitler, which is a mind blower.
His marketing background made him a pioneer in promoting books like consumer products.
Hi, do you have anything by James Patterson here?
Yeah, let me show you.
Is this the author you're looking for?
Patterson was one of the first novelists to buy TV commercials for his releases.
James Patterson here. Kids, first, thank your mom just for being your mom. Then tell her the new iFunny is out. Tell her you'll read it cover to cover. That might work.
This Christmas, give him iFunny TV by James Patterson.
He understood that in an era of shrinking attention spans, books had to compete with movies, television, and video games. His pitch was simple: shorter chapters, fast pacing, and cliffhanger endings. Entertainment you could read quickly and feel accomplished. The strategy worked. By the end of the decade, Patterson had established multiple successful franchises, conquered both adult and young reader markets, and become a household name.
Let's talk about the Confessions series by James Patterson. They're a pretty quick read. They are YA, and it's like a mystery series. Mystery is usually not one of my fortes, but I love James Patterson, and all of his books are so easy to read, especially the YA young adult versions. I really enjoyed this series. It was super fun.
And at the age of 62, with his record-shattering Hachette deal in 2009, he cemented his status as the highest-paid author alive. What happens when the man who got millions reading becomes the battleground for what real literature should be? By the mid-2000s, Patterson had become not only the most visible author in America, but also one of the most divisive. Literary critics attacked his prose as too simple, his chapters too short, and his reliance on co-authors too heavy.
I appreciate the short chapters, I really did. Some twists that I enjoyed, and I was like, oh shoot, like I didn't expect that, which I enjoyed as well. However, without spoiling anything, I was disappointed in the end, to say the least. I just feel like I invested so much time in this and it didn't give me the ending that I wanted, so.
He publishes books with other authors. So he still publishes the Alex Cross books, but he also, and he's done this for a while, co-authors books. So there are dozens and dozens of books, and they come out at an incredibly fast rate. And Patterson may come up with like the concept and elements of the plot and things like that, but I think the other writer does the heavy lifting in terms of the actual writing.
In 2012, The Guardian called him a brand in human form. Stephen King quipped that Patterson was a terrible writer, but very successful. To Patterson, the criticism mattered less than the readers. He often responded bluntly, "If my books get people reading, then I don't care what they say about me." The debate around his co-author system only grew louder. At his peak, Patterson was releasing up to 12 to 15 books a year.
James Patterson just needs to stop it. This is all his books, and they just keep going. He's just, at this point, I think he's written it all.
To some, it was genius, a way of delivering more stories to eager audiences. To others, it was evidence of a literary assembly line. Patterson countered by comparing it to television writers' rooms, collaborative storytelling, guided by his vision. Then came public missteps. In 2022, during an interview, Patterson claimed that white male writers faced a kind of racism in publishing. The backlash was immediate and intense.
Here's something that you should never do. You should never spend years at the top of the New York Times bestseller list. Become one of, if not the highest paid author in the world, and then use your platform to try to dunk or dump on folks who have been gate-kept out of success in your industry forever. Are things changing? Are things getting better for queer authors and for authors of color? Arguably, yes. I certainly feel more comfortable having a career in this industry than I would have 10 or 15 years ago. But to have the nads to turn around and say that somehow middle-aged white men are at some kind of disadvantage, that they're being discriminated against in any way, shape, or form, and then to put the label racism to it? Never. Never do that. Unacceptable. Especially if most of your books are ghostwritten.
Multiple New York Times best-selling author James Patterson, with over, I don't know, maybe 100 titles to his name, claims that white writers are victims of racism. Really? I am a writer. I wrote a young adult black romance. It's got time travel in it. And if you can find 3 other black romances on the shelves at your local Barnes and Noble, you know, I'd be a millionaire. Make me a millionaire. I'd be a unicorn, because you can't, because it doesn't exist yet. And yet he has room to be concerned. The brazenness, the boldness, the whining.
Within days, Patterson apologized, admitting his words were wrong. His books also became flashpoints in America's culture wars. In Florida, his Maximum Ride series was pulled from elementary school libraries as part of sweeping book bans. Patterson called the bans borderline absurd and urged parents and teachers to push back. Yet controversy didn't slow his cultural reach. He co-wrote political thrillers with President Bill Clinton, The President is Missing, 2018, and The President's Daughter, 2021, both instant bestsellers.
Back when you wrote your first book together, the New York Times said that the two of you complete each other in the Jerry Maguire sense.
You know, I have this thing that's been driving me for months now, which is, my time here is short, what can I do most beautifully? And in this case, doing another book with my friend is a beautiful thing to do.
Avid reader of mysteries, thrillers, police procedurals for 40 plus years.
Except mine, he doesn't read mine.
That's not true. I've read a lot of your books. So we had the same lawyer and agent, Bob Barnett. He said, you guys ought to do a book together. And I said, Bob, why would he ever do a book with me?
I said the same thing, yeah.
You both didn't think that the other person would want to do?
No. I wanted to do it right away.
In 2022, he teamed up with Dolly Parton for Run, Rose, Run.
Dolly is a storyteller. Every one of her songs, it's a story. Jolene, they're all stories.
I still write longhand. I got these big little yellow pads, and I just scribble it out with my Sharpie pen so I can read it now.
A novel paired with an original album of songs. And looking ahead to 2026, he is collaborating with YouTube star MrBeast on what's being billed as a billion-dollar thriller.
This guy,
MrBeast. We're working on a novel. He's the outline. I'm not going to show you other than, I won't show you the titles, but yeah, so here's the first outline.
What's that process entailed so far with him?
He wants it to be the best-selling novel in the last 50 years.
A globe-spanning story of competition, danger, and high stakes that merges Patterson's thriller instincts with MrBeast's obsession with challenges and spectacle. For every critic who called him a hack, there were millions of readers who credited Patterson with making them fall in love with books. For every headline about factory fiction, there was another announcing record-breaking sales. He was both hero and villain in modern publishing, a writer who divided the literary world even as he dominated the marketplace.
There'd be no better book to kick this off with. Probably one of my favourite books of all time. And it makes me sad because I very rarely see this author and his incredible work on TikTok, so I thought I would start him off. He is quite literally the world's best-selling thriller writer, and I think I've probably read most of the books of his collection. I say that doubting myself, but my favourite book I've ever read is by James Patterson, and it's called The Noise.
Do yourself a favor and get this book. It is called The Coast to Coast Murders, and it's by James Patterson and J.D. Barker, and it's great. Not only is it like, it's pretty big, it's a big boy, but it's honestly one of my favorite books I've ever read in my entire life.
No way we can get rid of him?
Not without cause, Michael.
I have cause. It is because I hate
James Patterson. Part 3. Can we talk about James Patterson Presents? So there's this little known author named Rick Riordan. You know, you might have heard of him, might have heard Lightning Thief. And so many kids were saying, hey, do my mythology. And he's like, I can't do that. But he says, I can't do that, but we can do that. And he gives us Rick Riordan Presents. I've read a book in almost every series in his imprint. There's not a bad one. None of them suck. They're all 4 and 5 stars. They're all amazing. But James Patterson, feeling butthurt, gets his own James Patterson Presents. He gets his own imprint. And once again, I don't think he, just like his normal books, I don't think he put any time for it. He let somebody else do all the work. And there's one mega series out of it, which is, it's Carrie Machino's The Stalking Jack the Ripper. The one series I haven't read. But any other book that I have read coming out of James Patterson Presents sucked. Had a bad ending, was derivative, all the usual things that you say. And most of them were a 1 or a 2-star read, maybe a 3-star.
What do you do when you have best-selling power, money, influence, and cultural reach when the cameras look away? Behind the headlines and sales figures, Patterson has quietly built a philanthropic legacy, almost as staggering as his publishing one. Over the past 2 decades, he has donated well over $100 million to libraries, schools, universities, and independent bookstores. He has funded more than 5,000 classroom libraries, given direct cash grants to thousands of teachers, and created scholarship programs for aspiring educators and writers. Through his partnership with Scholastic, Patterson pledged over $7.25 million to support school reading initiatives, and his annual Teacher and Principal Awards program has distributed millions more in direct aid. He also launched ReadKid, a program designed to help parents and teachers connect children with books that will hook them for life. His guiding philosophy is simple. There's no such thing as a kid who hates reading, only kids who are reading the wrong books. These efforts earned him major recognition and honors. In 2015, Patterson received the Literarian Award from the National Book Foundation for outstanding service to the American literary community.
And special thanks to Little Brown, Michael Peach, Reagan Arthur, Larry Kirschbaum, for sticking with me through thick and thicker since I was 26, over a dozen years ago. It is a long, long way from North Plank Road in Newburgh, New York, to the National Book Awards. I feel exhilarated and proud/happy to have my wife Sue and our son Jack here. I feel exhilarated because it's a long way from Newburgh. By the way, I didn't wear a tux because the Newburgh tux is powder blue with a ruffled shirt. Thank you so much for this precious moment.
In 2019, President Donald Trump presented him with the National Humanities Medal at the White House, honoring his contributions to literacy in America. And in 2021, Patterson pledged $2 million directly to independent bookstores struggling through the pandemic, an act that bookstore owners credited with keeping their doors open. But Patterson's legacy is not only measured in donations. He has used his platform to spotlight the crisis of literacy itself. He has warned in interviews that reading rates are declining, especially among children and teens, and sees his own work not only as entertainment, but as a gateway. If my books get someone to read another author, or read it all, that's a win, he has said. Friends describe Patterson as disciplined, funny, and surprisingly low-key for a man with his fortune. He still writes his outlines in longhand on yellow legal pads. He spends much of his time in Palm Beach with his wife, Susan, and their son, Jack, who fittingly is also a writer. He plays golf, attends Yankees games, and insists he's happiest when he's working on a story. Even at the height of criticism, Patterson leans on his philanthropy and literacy advocacy as the truest reflection of his values. "People can call me whatever they want as a writer," he once said, "but I want to be remembered as someone who got kids reading."
A lot of people that watch this want to know, how can they get their youngsters?
Well, I think there are a lot of things. One, you got to take responsibility for it. It's not the school's job to get your kids reading, it's your job. You know, don't put mud on the rug, and you have to come to dinner. And among the most important things is getting your kids reading, because if they're not reading, they're going to go out into the world and they're going to have a big disadvantage. They have to at least be competent readers. They won't get into the best schools, they won't get the better jobs, whatever.
So what do we make of James Patterson, now that the chapters of his career have spanned nearly 5 decades? He stands as both the best-selling novelist in history and one of the most polarizing figures in modern literature. He is a man who transformed commercial fiction into a high-speed engine of entertainment, yet also a philanthropist who has given more to literacy than perhaps any author in history. Patterson's paradox is simple. He writes books that critics mock, but readers devour. His legacy is built not on awards or glowing reviews, but on the countless people who say, "I never liked reading until I picked up one of his books."
So, like, who out here read Maximum Ride by James Patterson? I need to know. Because I feel like that was, like, the original winged folk people, you know? Like, I feel like I graduated. This is my evolution. You ready? Pixie Hollow books. Maximum Ride. Faye. Anyone else have this journey? I feel like it's like a rite of passage. Like, you just, like, get introduced to wings in different ways. But, like, for me, I still need solid plot. I still need a kingdom to crash. So, like, wings, Fae, crumbling kingdom. You get my drift? That's what I would like.
That, for Patterson, is the victory that matters. Even as he nears 80, Patterson shows no sign of slowing down. He continues to outline, collaborate, and publish at a pace that baffles rivals. His upcoming projects range from thrillers with pop stars to experimental ventures with digital creators, proving that he still sees storytelling as a frontier to be conquered. The boy from Newburgh became the adman, who became the novelist, who became the empire. And in the end, James Patterson may be less a single author than a phenomenon, a reminder that in publishing, as in advertising, the story that grabs your attention first is the one you remember longest. So perhaps the final question is not whether Patterson is a good writer or a bad one, but this: how do you measure success in literature? By prose or by pages turned? By critical acclaim or by readers saved from giving up on books altogether? For James Patterson, the answer has always been clear. And love him or hate him, the world is still turning his pages. Subscribe now for the next untold story. Whether it's Stephanie Meyer's rise and backlash or the mystery behind Frida McFadden, you won't want to close the book on this channel.